G'day everyone and welcome to the top 30 mock draft for the 2021 AFL Draft, which is only a few weeks away, which I absolutely cannot wait for. But before we get stuck in, a couple of housekeeping duties. First of all, huge uptake in subscribers and I really appreciate that. Last time I really made a call out with the last draft piece that was still in my teens, I think, and now that we're nearly at 50, which is amazing. So thanks so much. Still trying to get to 100 before the end of the year, potentially more. Hey, I'm not going to cap it at 100, but that is the goal. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you're watching for the first time, welcome. How lucky are you? First time you're tuning in, you don't have to look at my mug. So you're winning there already. So we're not doing like Jay-Z Clark's top 10, this is how I think it's going to go, or Draft Central's top 20 or any of this. We are going 30, the top 30. We are starting with North Melbourne at pick 1. We are ending at Geelong's pick 30. And there are going to be a couple of things along the way, a couple of stipulations that I'll get into as we go. And lastly of all, comment below. Do you like what I think your club does in this mock draft? Of course, let me know who you barrack for, your club's pick, and who you want to get with your first selection, your second selection, or if you're Richmond, what seems like your 8th selection. You got too many in that top 30, but good on you for getting that draft haul. So enough of the dribble out of the way. Let's get stuck straight into it. Pick 1, North Melbourne, and I would be absolutely stunned during their talk with Jason HORNE-FRANCIS, who they interviewed a week or so ago, that they said, you are the best kid in the country, but we are going to make Collingwood and the Western Bulldogs pay up, and so they should. I know Adelaide copped a tiny little bit of criticism because Riley Thilthorpe missed out on some perks for being the number 1 draft pick or whatever. Like, it's pretty petty, I think, to assume that the number 1 pick in the country, if you know someone else is going to take it, that it creates less meaning. I don't think it matters at all personally. So I think North Melbourne bid on Nick DAICOS, and Collingwood, of course, match it. So he will go at pick 1, and best of luck to him. I've already got a video out on that. I think the pick 1 or the best few picks in the draft are under way too much pressure early. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. If I've remembered, it'll be in the description. But this kid might be ready to go straight away. Collingwood are a building team, and they need the help that they can get in the midfield. They got Pat Lipinski during the trade period. I was going to say during the week then, but during the trade period. So DAICOS might start on a half-forward flank. Him and Ollie Henry will be a very young half-forward line as they go. Even though Pendlebury might be pushed back to a half-back flank, I think Jack Crisp is too good not to be rolling in that midfield with Adams and Lipinski. And, of course, you've got Josh DAICOS, who can play on a wing and go through there. So DAICOS of the Nick variety might get some midfield time. I'd be stunned if he did. I think it would really surprise me if that happened, that Nick got midfield time straight away. But I think he'll make an impact early, and for those fantasy players, I think he's going to be pretty relevant. So keep an eye on his preseason, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Nick DAICOS, pick 1, pretty easily, and that leads into pick 2 as well. North bid on SAMDARCY, and the Bulldogs match it again. This is just purely business. Make them pay up. And the Dogs have got a pick in the 20s. I believe it's pick 23, which is why we end with Geelong's pick 30. It becomes a bit complicated when you've got with cashing in picks. But stick with me. If this is the order that DAICOS and Darcy go in, then the order of the picks without live pick trading, which does make this mock draft a little bit harder, is how it'll go. Darcy is another tool that will develop at the Bulldogs. Ruckman forward. Now they've signed Jordan Sweet. They've got Tim English on the books as well. It's pretty interesting given their tall forward stocks. They've got Josh Bruce, Aaron Norton, Samdarcy forwards, Jamara Ugle-Hagan as well. So they've got an abundance of tools. I wonder any of them are going to be developed as a backman. Might be an interesting watch, but Samdarcy's too good a talent for them not to pick up, I think, and it would be silly of North to let another club bid on them, and the Bulldogs don't have to pay up as much. So that's how I think that's going to go. All right, pick 3. Finally, North get a pick and no one gets to contest it, but it is going to be South Australia's finest, Jason HORNE-FRANCIS. And this kid's just going to be a gun. He's got the senior development at SANFL level, which gives him a huge tick over DAICOS coming into the season. I've got no idea which of them's going to be the better player. I'm not here to speculate on who will be the better player, but if you want to let me know who you think is going to be the better player at the end of their careers, by all means, comment below, let me know. I'd love to see them in AFL action first. My big question on HORNE-FRANCIS is, can he thrive on a half-forward flank this year? Because Ben Cunnington, Jai Simpkins just won the best and fairest. They want to roll Taron Thomas through there more. Jaden Stevenson wants to be more of a midfielder as well. Luke Davies-Uniacke had a decent end of the season, a player who I think is rated higher by others than me, but I certainly don't think he's a bad footballer by any stretch. So, struggle to believe that HORNE-FRANCIS will get midfield time, but on a half-forward flank, who knows? Again, another one that'll be pretty fantasy relevant. Maybe I'll do a top 10 fantasy relevant, and I'll stop the fantasy talk here. So, from here on, no more fantasy talk. But Jason HORNE-FRANCIS ends up at the Roos. I did have a video on why North might have traded their pick back for a Godfather offer, but with the resume that this kid's put together in high-pressure games and the high-quality human being that he looks from everyone that's spoken about him, no-brainer for me, this one. Jason HORNE-FRANCIS goes at 3 to North Melbourne. And at pick 4, GWS. Now, this is the pick that it looks like clubs are targeting. Gold Coast, Adelaide, Hawthorn, Richmond have all put their hat in the ring, supposedly, or are going to by report. So if this stays at GWS, which is the pick that we're going for here, then I believe they take Mac Andrew, and he's going to be a development player. They picked up Jared Brander as, I believe, a replacement for Jeremy Finlayson. As a high half forward, I don't think Finlayson is a key position player at all. I don't think he plays like one. In sort of a similar vein to a Jack Gunston, as in Brander's role, not Finlayson's. But Mac Andrew can be a guy that can develop underneath, who are their ruckman? Kieran Briggs, and who's the guy I'm missing out? Matt Flynn, the two gentlemen there who own the ruck. But considering those two guys did struggle to get games behind a Shane Mumford, who's, wasn't aging fantastically but still giving his all, does give me cause of concern. I think GWS's midfield is fine. I think they've got young guys down back who are developing nicely. I do think it's a toss-up between Andrew and GIBCUS at this point, but I don't see a problem with them going for Andrew here, who might develop into one of the best young talents from this draft early on. I do struggle to see him getting games in 2022. Maybe injuries might help him, but hey, look, in 2 years' time, he could genuinely explode and be something exciting. So Mac Andrew to the Giants for me, but I will say this, if the pick does get traded to Richmond, Adelaide or Hawthorn, this pick will be Finn Callaghan. And speaking of clubs that will get him, I don't think Gold Coast will, and they have got the next pick. And I believe this is the one that actually, out of the 30, this is the one that I'm struggling with the most to put a certainty tick behind it. Now, you can never be sure with these things, and I understand that these are all relative guesses. I'm fingers crossed expert guesses. Put a lot of effort into this draft class as a whole and this mock draft, but Josh GIBCUS to the Suns makes so much sense to me. He and Sam Collins would be a fantastic. I don't trust Rory Thompson's body. I don't see Charlie Ballard as a big monster. I think he's a fine defender, and I don't mean that as in that, oh, he's fine. No, he's a fine defender. He can beat an opponent on his day, but I don't see him being that damaging. And even if you look at the centre-half back of even the Premiership team, you look at Stephen May. If you want to class him as a fullback, centre half back, go for your life. But you look at a Stephen May, not only can he beat an opponent, but he can damage as well. And GIBCUS is an intercept marker, has footy IQ, beats his opponents in the air and on the ground, underrated quickness, and is a good kick of the footy. As far as I'm concerned with Gold Coast, who have got their midfield, which isn't a great midfield to begin with, let's be honest, apart from Tuk, they're really needing some development, and they've got some B-graders in there. I don't see why they wouldn't get GIBCUS. I really don't. But if you disagree, let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. But Gold Coast, GIBCUS makes a lot of sense. All right, where are we at? Pick 6, and that goes to the Crows. And hello, Finn Callaghan. So the Crows might not need to trade up if GWS take Mac Andrew, but if they want to guarantee they get Finn, by all means, trade up. But in this mock draft, I've got Finn going to Adelaide. Makes all the sense in the world for me. He can either play on a wing and be alongside Paul Seedsman and put Brodie Smith back in his best position of a halfback flank, or he can go into the midfield and add some real spark because, and I've said it once, I've said it a million times, and no real Adelaide fans either watch my content or disagree with me on this, but Rory Sloane, Matt Crouch, Rory Laird, and Ben Keys as a group, just that group, are too slow. When Harry Schomburg went in there, their clearance rate went up, and I feel like more kids with pace go in there, they are going to rocket up in clearances as well. His spread from the stoppage is fantastic. Good ball user, and I know there are a few people out there who reckon he's a bit soft, but until we see him at AFL level, how do we really know? We're all guessing at this point, but I'm guessing he's going to be a gun, and I reckon Adelaide would be an amazing fit for him. So then we move on to the Hawks at pick 7, and I feel like this one is locked and loaded. If they don't move up in the draft, they're going to take Josh Ward. Barracks for the Hawks, and gives the Hawks something that they need. Good foot skill, good pace. And let's be honest, and this is coming from a Hawthorn fan, we don't have either in our midfield right now. I know it sounds honest, but Tom Mitchell's not a great kick. Jaeger is not a great kick. O'Meara, that is, of course. Liam Shields, never been a great kick. Fantastic servant for the club. And Jimmy Warple last year couldn't hit a fat guy in a street fight. So we're struggling a touch in that department. Josh Ward's a good kick of the footy on both feet too. A few highlights out there of his left foot, which is really nice. Not a lot to say about this one. It's a huge tick. It's a huge win, and the Hawks have done well there, in my opinion. And pick 8, we've got Fremantle. Now, let me tell you, if Fremantle don't use this pick on GIBCUS and Richmond end up getting him, Fremantle are going backwards, and I feel like they're going to cop an absolute blast in my draft reaction video, which will come, of course, post-draft. So this just needs to be GIBCUS. They are crying out for a key forward. Matt Taberner, again, sort of like I said about Charlie Ballard, is a fine forward. He's been All-Australian squad once, been a bit of a whipping boy. Josh Tracy's a developing young player. Nothing wrong with that. He can do what he does. Rory Lobb ain't the answer, especially on the salary that he's on. GIBCUS, he's a local boy, so he's not going to go anywhere unless you royally screw up his development. Beautiful kick at goal. He's dominated opponents. I don't really know what else to say on this one. Freo, for crying out loud, please pick GIBCUS. Please. Pick 9, well, for all the talk that Richmond might have been interested in Tom Mitchell, why not just get the 18-year-old version as Cal Toomey described him, and that's Ben Hobbs. Pretty easy, this one. Knows how to find the footy. I think he looks a better user than Tom Mitchell, and we know everyone's highlight reel is the best of their talent. We understand that. We don't get a look at their games that they might struggle in, but you can only go off what you've seen. I am pretty impressed. Draft Central had him at 5. I think Cal Toomey had him in the top 10 as well, but think he slides a touch, but if Richmond want a guy that can go get the footy and distribute out to their midfielders that have already developed, I don't see why they don't go for Hobbs at all. He's going to be a fine player. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I'm not sure if he breaks into Richmond's midfield straight away, but the injury bug could strike at any time, and if Richmond go down, we might be able to see him, which would be really cool. But as we sit here right now, he would obviously be behind their best midfield group and probably behind Jack Ross and Riley Collier-Dawkins as well. But Richmond is starting to hit their generation next phase, and he could definitely be a part of that. So Ben Hobbs to Richmond makes a lot of sense to me. Going local again for the Dockers, Neil Erasmus. Now, my fear with utilities as players in their draft profile that get called utilities, can they play everywhere or do they not have a best position anywhere? Now, with all the profiles and everything written about Erasmus, says that he can play anywhere. So more than happy to go with that. I haven't seen enough of him. I haven't seen any of him live, of course, as we know, during COVID times. And the sources that I trust say that he can be a plugger anywhere, and he's probably better forward. So Fremantle definitely need more dynamic players in their forward line. We know Michael Walters is getting on a touch, and I know they gave a new contract to Lachie Schultz. But there's going to be nothing wrong with a dynamic half-forward player. Melbourne thrived on having players that can play legitimately half-forward. You look at an Alex Neil-Bullen, for example, who has been a whipping boy in the competition. I'm not sure about Melbourne fans, but he's been a bit of a whipping boy in the competition. But as that pure half-forward player, he played amazingly in the grand final, and he's a premiership player. So if Neil Erasmus can play anywhere on the square and potentially inside it to add a bit of X-factor, beautiful. Love this. Love it for Freo. You've got pick 6, you've got pick 8 that then go to 8 and 10 because of the father-son selections. I am absolutely not only more than happy for Erasmus to be at the Dockers, but I reckon the Dockers would be more than happy to have him. And that is going to be an exciting place to come. If they go with these 2 picks, there is no reason why Fremantle in 2023 cannot make finals. Still not 100% sold on them making finals in 2022, but if they nail this draft, especially with those 2 picks, and we'll get to pick 19 in a minute, they have set themselves up for such a long period of time. So they're one of the more fascinating teams for mine, and Neil Erasmus would be a really good addition to that group. The Saints are up next, and good news, Saints fans, you won't be taking a midfielder with this pick because you've got MITCHITO, Owens, I hope I've pronounced that right, and Marcus Winhager, who are midfielders and are St Kilda Next Generation Academy players. Now, they're going to get at least one or both of those guys if they are bid on outside of the top 20. So you're definitely not getting a midfield here. How about we get some spark up forward? Dan Butler had such a poor season. Jack Higgins hasn't really dominated the way that we want him to. So let's get something different in there. Let's get JOSHRACHELE through the door. Now, this kid just oozes class, he oozes swagger, and he oozes X Factor, and my God, St Kilda lacked it last year. Probably the most frustrating team in the competition to watch. And if Rochelle can come on, fingers crossed he can under the development, he will add a whole new dimension to that midfield, to that forward line. And like I said, the Saints need it. This is an interesting pick for St Kilda, this one. I've got a weird feeling that this will shape sort of their future in a sense, because they've got decent players, but they're a bit boring right now. And the last thing that they need is to take a boring pick here. They need X Factor, they need excitement. So I think it comes down to two players. I think it's Josh Rochelle or it's NASIAH Wanganeen-MILERA. But for this one, I am going with Rochelle, but I think either would be a great pick. 12, West Coast. For the love of absolute God, please take Matthew Johnson. Just please. I don't know how else I can plead with you. He's got amazing size. I don't know how many times I've said it on this channel before, but he's the same height and weight as Bont. So that's dimensions. It is now up to you to develop him into what you need. Luke Shuey and Elliot Yeo are injury prone. They're also not as old as I thought they were, but that's another story. Matt Johnson can be a spark, and when you've got the generation next that will have to come through after Yeo, Shuey, Kennedy, you need them. Shannon Hearn as well. You need them. And for the love of God, please just take Matty Johnson. I don't have anything else to say. Take him. Speaking of picks that are a bit difficult to grab a hold of, Essendon's a little bit different, because you look at Essendon's list profile and the thing that they need is a key forward. Now, AMISS is the best forward in this draft class, and he's off the board. And I believe, and it's a hill that I'll die on until I get a hold otherwise, Essendon are going to get Ben King in 2023. Round 1, 2023, Ben King will be a bomber. So if they don't need the key forward for another 12 months, what do they go for? I think they'll want someone with beautiful foot skills to complement their half-back line, and all of this is adding up to Josh Sinn. Now, he has fallen because he couldn't get on the park, had an ankle injury for a little bit there, but elite ball use, good tank, and from all reports, a bloody good kid as well. And Essendon are a team on the rise. There's no reason why he might not get a debut in 2022. Again, we can't guarantee that no one will get injured. Of course, players are going to get injured, so we might see him, but if he does develop at VFL level, it would be extraordinary if Bombers fans could get out there and watch him. I genuinely do love this pick. I love my mock draft, of course, but love this pick for the Bombers. I really hope they don't take a midfielder, especially an inside one here. Also, wouldn't mind them taking maybe an ARLODRAPER at this pick either, but it's SINN for me. And another begging pick here for Port Adelaide, Josh Goda. Big-bodied midfielder, and if you're thinking, yeah, they've got one of them, he just won the Brownlow. I know, but Travis Boak is about 53 at this point, and he's still playing like a 30-year-old. And I mean that in every good sense of the word. Boakey had a good year this year. Please do not take that the wrong way. But, again, sometimes you've got to look to the future. Port have got a premiership profile with a top 12 pick. That's now obviously 14. They need to figure out who's going to go first and who they go for. That's just the way of life. Now, they've got more talls, as in forwards, than anyone. They've just picked up Sam Skinner, and I do not believe they need a halfback flanker. I'm still not convinced they need a winger. I still think Carl Amon does his best work on a wing, even though he played great footy in the midfield. But Josh Coda, really good size, good kick, great tank too. So love this pick. It's more of a begging pick for mine. Hope they pick him up again. They could go for NASIAH Wanganeen-MILERA and put him on a wing. That could absolutely happen and keep Carl Amon as a midfielder. But again, if this is my mock draft and if I'm Port Adelaide and Goda is on the board, I'm taking him. And this is the last of my NASIAH Wanganeen-MILERA or picks here. And NASIAH loses again in the one-on-one. Again, I'm not saying NASIAH is going to be a worse player than these guys, but I look at needs before wants. And GWS need someone to back up Sam Taylor for the next decade and a bit, and that is going to be LEEK. This man is shooting up draft boards, and for good reason. The beautiful size, the beautiful hands, and the composure as well. We looked at Alir's season at Port Adelaide, and we admired everything that I just said there. And LEEK is reportedly got one of the best jumps. Well, he does have one of the best jumps that we've ever seen. So if Sam Taylor can hold down the Gorillas, and remember how he smashed Tom Hawkins at GMHBA Stadium, the fact he didn't get Brownlow votes for that is just extraordinary, but that's not what we're talking about. Then Aaliyah can play on the lighter framed forwards, dominate against them, pluck the footy out of the air, and go for running bounces and set up plays for the Giants. They're in a really good spot, I reckon, and this is probably one of the picks that I love the most so far. So Leek Aaliyah to the Giants, they get Mac Andrew and Leek Aaliyah, which would be huge for them. Still think they're lacking a small forward, but they can get them with later picks. Here we go, pick 18. How frightening would this be? Hello, NASIAH Wanganeen-MILERA. Welcome to Brisbane. Oh my God, this would be frightening. Hugh McCluggage hasn't decided whether he wants to be a premier wingman or a premier midfielder. Now, I know it's not his fault. He's not saying, hey, I'm going into the midfield, but the more centre bounces he attends, the less convinced of his A-grade status I am. The longer that he spends on a wing, the more I'm convinced he's an A-plus player. Now, if you have McCluggage and Wanganeen-MILERA on a wing, I mean, which one are you going to try and stop? Good luck to you. With Keaton Coleman looking like he's going to take Grant Birchall's spot permanently, and I absolutely love that. This is a match made in heaven for me, and it was one of the ones that I looked at and gone, yeah, even though Wanganeen-MILERA could be gone at this point, if he ends up at Brisbane, this would be absolutely amazing. So, Brisbane fans, cross your fingers, cross your toes, and if the mock draft is pretty similar to, well, if the draft is similar to my mock draft here, and you get MILERA, I think you should be doing all the happy dances you can in your lounge rooms. Be absolutely extraordinary. This man is lightning quick, great skills, very composed around goal, and a bloody brilliant footy IQ as well. So, Wanganeen-MILERA to Brisbane would be an A-plus selection and an A-plus fit. Alrighty, here we go at my most underrated selection, I think, of my whole 30 here, because this makes so much sense. When you've got a guy that can play forward and play back coming into the draft, you're thinking to yourself, you need to go to a club that needs to figure out whether you're a tall back or a tall forward. I think that's Richmond, and I think this is Jacob van Rooyen. Now, if he's a tall forward, he's going to come in and replace Jack Riewoldt, as we know, and I'm saying that structurally, not as a player. I'm not saying he's going to kick 800 goals or anything like that. I'm talking about structurally on the field, so calm down. Or does he go back? Is he the kind of guy that can go back, lock down with Noah Bolter after Dylan Grimes heads off? Because it's not like he's going to break into their best 22 at either end of the ground. They'll have some time to put into him. I know they've got Ben Miller still. They got rid of Ryan Garthwaite, and I know Miller is a tall back, but Richmond have also got 3 picks as well that can fill holes, and there are going to be more gems in this draft than there ever will be. So why not take a punt on a bit of a swingman and see if you can put him in the best spot that you can? Van Rooyen can kick goals and he can stop them. So figure out where he fits best and go from there. So Richmond take Jacob van Rooyen, and I really like this one. As if the Swans need more X Factor. Hello, ARLODRAPER. This man oozes class, and at the Swans, with their youth, this just works perfectly for mine. I love this pick a lot. Draper is a South Australian boy, and he's bred tough but classy. And the Swans, that's kind of their brand at the moment. Tough, classy, and the fact that they play better on grounds that aren't their home ground tell me that they like to get the ball and go. The Bloods contested style and congeal you on the field, constrict you, and congeal if you want to go down that path on the field would be awesome. Draper to Sydney is one that I am really excited for. So fingers crossed this happens. This is one of those picks that I hope happens. I think it makes a lot of sense. The Swans would be fantastic with him, and given that Josh Kennedy's probably only got a year or 2 left, they've got other midfielders that can step up, so why not work on the other edges of the square? And I'm not convinced about Chad Warner or Sam Wicks, who just re-signed during the week, so who knows? But Draper to the Swans, big tick. It's fans, but you're missing out on one of your next generation academy players, MITCHITO Owens to the Demons. This man's got the size, he's got the bulk, and he's got the class that Melbourne can put him behind their premier midfielders and just develop him. And if it's not working out with any midfielder for whatever reason, he can come in there and do really well. I really like this one, even if they do want to try and develop him as one of those third tall type players. I know they've got Fritsch for that, but I don't think Sam Wiedemann stays at Melbourne for very long. I don't know what they'd get for him, but maybe they do go that sort of route. But he's got good athleticism, MITCHITO, Owens, and I feel like I'm a little bit higher on him than other people are. And I don't think Melbourne need to draft for needs right now. Their list is pretty damn awesome. So get a guy that you can develop for a year or two, see where you're at, and go from there. And I think MITCHITO Owens fits that perfectly. And Melbourne can grab him without having to bid at pick 19. So win-win-win there for mine. And the Demons, they're in bloody good shape for 2022, let me tell you. Righty, at pick 20, Brisbane. We are going to need a replacement for Daniel Rich when he eventually goes. Now, Daniel Rich had a career-best season, but if you're looking at the experience, you're looking at Dane Zorko and Daniel Rich. They're the two older guys that scream off the page, as well as Mitch Robinson, but we've already spoken about Wanganeen-MILERA on a wing when Robinson hangs up his boots. I'll learn how to talk. So let's go to the defense and let's go to Blake Howes. Really like this kid. Another one that I don't think's being talked about enough, but a really tough defender, a line breaker as well. So another one of these guys at Brisbane that can really knuckle down with their that can really open up teams with his pace, and they've already got a knuckle down defender in Brandon Starcevic. So this works really well for mine. I reckon he's going to learn a lot from an experienced Brisbane defense and go from there. Blake, I know a lot of people talk about Darcy Wilmot as a good defender, but I'm on the Howes train for sure. I reckon here at Brisbane would be a really good fit, and this is a really good start to Brisbane's draft in my opinion. So Brisbane fans, let me know how well I'm doing with that down below. Would love to hear from you. 21, Fremantle. All right, we've given you a key forward. We've given you X Factor. What else do you need? Well, I reckon you need one midfielder out of your 3 picks, and I'll explain why, even though you got Will Brodie. The odds of all your midfielders pinging is next to none, and if you're thinking one's coming in for Chera, as in Will Brodie's coming in for Chera, then someone will need to come in for Mundy. I know the man plays like he's 25 and he's actually 48, but they will need a replacement for him at some stage structurally. Again, please don't take it as I'm saying this kid is going to play 350-odd games. I'm only talking structurally, positionally, on the football field, and for me, that's Tyler Sonsie. Hawthorn fans have really frustrated me by thinking Sonsie's going to go at pick 5. Recruiters don't like his inconsistency. And what I think he can do at Freo is he can learn under Andy Brayshaw, who is one of the most disciplined midfielders in the league. I know we talk about Sam Walsh being the endurance king, the composed king, all these things amongst young midfielders. Andy Brayshaw, whilst I'm not sitting here saying he's a better player than Sam Walsh, but what a midfielder that you could structure yourself around. And if Sonsie does want to become more consistent, I reckon he's a player you can really look at, because the trajectory of Brayshaw's career has been one that is fantastic. They've also got Caleb Sarong there. Will Brodie's come in, of course, and I'm sure I've missed one there. I know Fife and Mundy are still there. I feel like I'm missing a young midfielder from Freo as well, so you can blast me for that, Freo fans, but I've got no problem with them getting a midfielder in. So Tyler Sonsie to Freo for mine makes a lot of sense. Second pick for North. Now, Jason Horne-Francis doesn't fill a positional need, but he is a star. So, let's fill a positional need. What are your 2 positional needs? Centre-half forward, centre-half back. Which one do you need more? Well, you were the worst team in your back half last year, so let's go to centre-half back. RHETBAZZO. Western Australian boys, you're going to have to do a bit to keep him there. I'm not saying that he's definitely going to want to go home, but in the new age of footy, assume young guys might want to go home so you can work your ass off to keep them there, rather than assume he's just going to stay there and then it will be a surprise if he does go. North are a team that I'm really interested in their development, because they can't stay down the bottom forever, surely, for crying out loud. And it's going to be decisions like these 2 draft picks. Well, we know they're going to get Horne-Francis, but this draft pick for me is going to decide, do they want the best talent or do they want the best position? Because there is a good argument to be made that Bazzo's not the best player still on the board, but he does fit a positional need. Him and Ben Mackay can develop through the next few years. Mackay's got some years on him, as we know, and I really like Ben Mackay as a player. I know he's had some bags kicked on him, but he's only going to get better and better and better. And don't forget, Alex Rance was the laughing stock of the competition before he ended up dominating and having what felt like 9 All-Australians in a row. So we'll never know. RHETBAZZO to North makes a lot of sense. When I've talked about North in the draft, a few fans have commented saying they want Bazzo as well. So match made in heaven for me, the fans, and fingers crossed for North Melbourne, because they need to start drafting for positional needs now. Next up, my Hawks. Now, we've already spoken about Josh Ward being a good kick, but Hawthorn still need it. They do not need to draft a defender. If Hawthorn draft a defender this year, I might just give them a failing grade on their draft anyway, because it makes no sense. And I know they know better than me. I do, believe me. So you can comment that if you like, but I already know. They know better than me. But having watched Hawthorn closer than any other club, especially when things started going downhill in 2018, we don't need a defender. Hawthorn don't need defence. I still don't think they need a wingman either. I think CJ and Will Day are going to be the wingers for the next decade and keep Scrimshaw and Impey and Sicily and Hardwick and these guys there, Denver Granger Barras as well. That's the defensive core. So I think they need to take elite ball users still. If they start with 2 midfielders and then finish with 2 forwards, I feel like that's going to be an A+ draft haul for the Hawks. I feel like I'm talking about this too much. ZACTAYLOR needs to be their pick here. A beautiful kick on both feet, a man with a lot of composure, and he's got a 2-minute highlight reel on YouTube that I highly recommend you check out. Whether you're a Hawthorn fan or not, if you've got a pick in the early 20s, fall in love with this guy, uses the ball really well, and you can just tell by watching him that he's got a high footy IQ, and I reckon he under Sam Mitchell is just going to blossom. So ZACTAYLOR to the Hawks. If you had have said in June this man would be going at 24 in anyone's mock draft, you'd have been laughed at. But an ankle injury and maybe a fact that he's not the best kick might be turning some people off in their draft rankings, but Matty Roberts to Geelong makes a lot of sense. Now, I know his draft profile reads a bit like Brandon Parfitt, but Geelong are drafting for Generation Next, and Roberts just might be too good to ignore. When you're a top 5 pick in calculations across most sources, yes, an ankle injury is going to turn you down there, but it might just be a case of a talent too good to ignore. Geelong do need to draft more midfielders. I still believe they need a touch more pace, but there are still going to be players at later picks that they can pick up throughout the 30s. They've got 3 picks in the 30s, so they can pick up plenty of speed there. This is the only one that I've probably gone want over need, so you can blast me for that if you want, Geelong fans. But Matty Roberts at 24 does feel like a steal to me. I feel like he's going to be a very good footballer. And the question will be asked the same as Charlie Constable. Is he just drafted to the wrong team at the wrong time? Time will only tell. But if Matty Roberts is still there at 24, goodness me, Geelong would have to get him, you'd think. Hawthorn up next, their third and last selection in this top 30. And I'm going to play a bit of a psychology game here. Tyler Brockman spent a bit of time in WA over the season, so if Hawthorn fans are worried about him potentially getting homesick and wanting to go home, maybe giving him someone that he can bond with from WA and they both can stay and dominate from years and years to come, and that's why I'm picking Jesse Motlop over Sam Butler in this case, and that's pretty much the only reason. It's a flip of a coin who is the better footballer. I think Jesse's had more time against better opposition, so I'll give him the tick there. He and Brockman can bond and dominate for the Hawks, hopefully, for a long period of time. But this pick for mine for Hawthorn definitely needs to be a small forward. So take your pick from Motlop, Butler, and Judson Clark. Of those 3 of these picks, I am going with Motlop, but could go either way. Carlton up next, and I believe that with Betts and Gibbons gone, small forward is the place they need to go with their pick 25 and let the rest of their list develop. And that is going to be Sam Butler. Now, he's come out and said that he wants to take the pressure off himself when it comes to being compared to Dan, but if you're a Carlton fan, you want him to be better because Dan's only had one very good season, that being in 2020, and his 2021 was underwhelming at the Saints. So if Sam goes to Carlton, he's got a beautiful forward line of McKay, or Mackay, I always get them confused, and I'm sure when I get corrected, I'll still muck it up. And as someone that can't stand people pronouncing my first name wrong, I feel really bad for Harry and Ben, so I am so sorry. But with Harry, Charlie, Curnow coming through, the 2 good guys to learn his crumbing craft and can use the ball really well. So if he's getting the ball a bit higher up the ground, it's in good hands, and if he's around the sticks, he knows how to finish his work as well. Would be a really good inclusion for the Blue Baggers, and I know I've annoyed a lot of their fan base with one of my videos in the past. Fingers crossed I can get them back on board with this one. You know what? Richmond have got the next 3 picks, so why not do the next 3 in a row? And they are Jack Williams, Mitch Nevitt, and Judson Clark. And I love all 3 of these selections, and I hope Richmond fans do too. Jack Williams is the second best tall forward in this draft class, in my opinion, and he at Richmond makes a lot of sense for when one Jack retires, the next one can step up. And even if they take Van Ruin and Williams, Van Ruin can still be a forward as well. Callum Coleman-Jones isn't there anymore. Tom Lynch is, what's Tom Lynch, like 28 years old, I think. So we'll see how that goes as well. I don't see why they couldn't take Van Ruin and Williams. So if you disagree, please let me know why. I would love to know why Williams and Van Ruin wouldn't work. And if Van Ruin does end up becoming a defender for Richmond, well, tick there. Mitch Nevitt, beautiful size, good pace, and no one can decide in their draft rankings where he belongs, which is really interesting. Cal Toomey had him in the 30s. Draft Central, I think, had him at 14, or ESPN had him at 14. So he is a bit of an enigma, this one. But I feel like if Richmond, with their 5 picks, come out of it with 2 midfielders, I think they're laughing. And Judson Clark would fit their mould so beautifully. They've departed a lot of small forwards, and I really like Jake Arts, and I feel like Jason Castagna is one of those guys that I don't really know where his future is at. He's pretty inconsistent, and I'm not as high on him as seemingly some Richmond fans are. I reckon Judson Clark and Jake Arts is a combination that is going to make a lot of Richmond fans excited, especially with Shea Bolton probably going to get more midfield time. And Richmond are going to rebound pretty quickly next year, I reckon. So this would be an amazing draft haul for the Tigers, an A+ one for sure. So Richmond fans, let me know. Would you like Ben Hobbs, Jacob Van Ruin, Jack Williams, Mitch Nevitt, and Judson Clark? Let me know why. Let me know why not. All that good stuff. But that ends Richmond's, and we've got 1 draft pick to go. And that last draft pick is for the Eagles, and another guy that is sliding a touch, but like most Victorians, that is going to happen a little bit. But I really like the Campbell-Chesser fit at the Eagles, and I think he fits so well because it is a need. Now, West Coast coming out of defense has not been that polished, and I feel like they are missing some class as well. I know Josh Rotham's a really good player, but I don't see him as an amazing kick. Alex Witherden, I have no idea where his career is at, and they are a rebuilding team. Liam Duggan looks like he's pressing for more midfield time. We'll see how that goes. I'm a big fan, and we shall see. Sam Petrevsky-Seaton has come in as well, but I think Campbell-Chesser can fill a wing role or a halfback role. Beautiful kick of the footy, great composure, and I reckon he'd be a really good fit over there at the Eagles. So Eagles fans, let me know. Matty Johnson and Campbell-Chesser as your 2 picks. What do you like? What do you hate? Let me know. If there are any legends out there that have stayed and watched for the whole video, thank you so much. I am so sorry that this got pushed back. A tree ripped the power cable out at my house, and I really wanted to get this done this weekend because Cal Toomey will be dropping his Phantom Draft really, really quickly. So if there is some roughness around the edges, I do apologize. Let me know what you think of doing the slideshow type of this video instead of my mug. Now, if I'm debating on whether you want to see my mug, I feel like my mug's going to lose in a lot of those situations. But if you enjoyed the content, if you didn't like the content, tell me why. This isn't a case of having light skin. I worked in hospitality for 6 years. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If you've got constructive criticism, lay it on me. Do you like what I propose your club does? Do you hate it? Why? Why not? Let me know. Let me know all those beautiful things. And don't forget to subscribe. Trying to get to 100 by the end of the year. I've still got rankings of the grand finals to come, even though it's not doing that well, but I'm going to finish that series anyway. And then fingers crossed, maybe something else to do with the draft before it begins, maybe some predictions and all those things. And then after the draft finishes, I'm going to do an initial reaction, and I reckon I'm going to do a fantasy reaction as well. So I'll do those in separate videos because some people like fantasy and some people don't. So that's really exciting. So stick around, subscribe, trying to get to triple figures by the end of the year. Fingers crossed you've stuck around for as long as possible. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.